Yeah, I think in order to make the right decisions, you have to understand something. And if you don't understand something at a detailed level, you cannot make a good decision.
A lot of experts in AI don't share the same level of concern that you do about the dangers of AI.
Fools.
What's
Famous last words.
It's about believing in the future and thinking that the future will be better than the past. And I can't think of anything more exciting than going out there and being among the stars.
And a few years ago, people were laughing at you. Now, not so much. I mean...
Okay. I think probably by end of next year, self-driving will encompass essentially all modes of driving and be at least 100 to 200% safer than a person by the end of next year.
Not as much fun being me as you'd think. I don't know.
You don't think so?
No. There's definitely, it could be worse for sure, but it's, I'm not sure I want to be me.
It's like Elon Musk has been beamed down from another planet to show us mortals how to run a company.
The people of Earth will have to make a decision. To what degree do they, are we willing to sacrifice the future for the present?
Yeah.
The overwhelming opinion of the scientific community is that we should not put billions of tons of carbon into the atmosphere. They think that technology just automatically improves. It only improves if a lot of people work very hard to make it better, which is what we're doing. But unless we change the rules, because the rules currently strongly favor hydrocarbons, unless we change the rules, I think we're in for a really rough future.
Will be the fastest production car ever made, period. The point of doing this is to just give the hardcore smackdown to gasoline cars.
In probably 10 years, it will be very unusual for cars to be built that are not fully autonomous. Getting in a car will be like getting in an elevator. We will have no choice, because we'll run out of hydrocarbons to mine and burn, and we'll have to transition to a sustainable energy economy. So sooner or later, we've got to go towards a solar electric future. It's better for the future of Earth if we go sooner than later. So we added all this extra carbon to the carbon cycle, and the net result is that the carbon in the ocean's atmosphere is growing over time. It's much more than can be absorbed by the ecosystem. Something that happens over 30 or 40 years, the transition to electric vehicles. Ultimately, we will have to have some kind of universal basic income.
But I think sustainable energy is also obviously really important. It's tautological. If it's not sustainable, it's unsustainable. But in the absence of a price, we sort of pretend that digging trillions of tons of fossil fuels from deep under the earth and putting it into the atmosphere, we're pretending that that has no probability of a bad outcome. And the entire scientific community is saying, obviously, it's going to have a bad outcome. You're changing the chemical constituency of the atmosphere.
It's really quite simple. We're taking billions of tons of carbon that's been buried for hundreds of millions of years and is not part of the carbon cycle, taking it from deep underground and adding it to the carbon cycle. The result is that a steady increase in the carbon in the atmosphere and in the oceans, which doesn't look like much if you look at it on this chart, but when looked at in the context of history, it actually looks like this.
Last century we had 2 massive world wars, 3 if you count the Cold War. I think it's unlikely that we will never have another world war again. There probably will be at some point.
Or if we have another one, it'll be the last.
Yeah, it just could be radioactive rubble, given enough time. This has been our pattern in the past.
But there's a lot more that must happen beyond this in order for humanity to become a spacefaring civilization and ultimately a multi-planet species. The most important things for the preservation and extension of consciousness. I'm actually fairly optimistic about the future of Earth, so I don't want to sort of people to have the wrong impression that I think we're all about to die. I think things will most likely be okay for a long time on Earth. But not for sure, but most likely. Where are the aliens? Maybe they're among us, I don't know. Some people think I'm an alien. Not true. I mean, if there are super intelligent aliens out there, they're probably already observing us.
What specifically do you believe that they don't?
The biggest issue I see with so-called AI experts is that they think they know more than they do. And they think they're smarter than they actually are. In general, We are all much dumber than we think we are, by a lot. This tends to plague smart people. They just can't, they define themselves by their intelligence, and they don't like the idea that a machine could be way smarter than them, so they discount the idea, which is fundamentally flawed. That's the wishful thinking situation.
And if you consider two futures, one where we are forever confined to Earth until eventually something terrible happens, or another future where we are out there on many planets, maybe even going beyond the solar system, I think that second version is incredibly exciting and inspiring, and there need to be reasons to get up in the morning. You know, life can't just be about solving problems. Otherwise, what's the point? There's got to be things that people find inspiring and make life worth living.
Yeah, we're already a cyborg in the sense that your phone and your computer are kind of an extension of you.
First launch, I was picking up bits of rocket near the launch site. It was a bit sad. Eventually, with the fourth flight in 2008, reached orbit. I think the saying is fourth time's the charm. Developed a Dragon spacecraft, which recently was able to dock and return to Earth from the space station. That was a white-knuckled event.
We now have 16 successful landings in a row. Miles an hour. This will enable the creation of a lunar base. And it's 2017. I mean, we should have a lunar base by now. What the hell's going on?
To be clear, I don't want to die on Mars. If you're going to pick some place to die, then why not Mars? And if I do die on Mars, I just don't want it to be on impact.
There's likely to be another dark ages, which it seems, my guess is there probably will be at some point. I'm not predicting that we're about to enter dark ages, but that there's some probability that we will, particularly if there's a third world war.
In 2024, we want to try to fly 4 ships, then build up the base, starting mostly with one ship, then multiple ships, then start building out the city, then making the city bigger.
We want to make sure that there's enough of a seed of human civilization somewhere else to bring civilization back, and perhaps shorten the length of the dark ages. It's important to get a self-sustaining base, ideally on Mars, because Mars is far enough away from Earth that a war on Earth, the Mars base might survive. It's more likely to survive than a moon base. But I think a moon base and a Mars base that could perhaps help regenerate life back here on Earth would be really important, and to get that done before a possible World War III.
Because the thing about a rocket is that the passing grade is 100%. You don't get to actually test the rocket in the real environment that it's going to be in. So I think the best analogy for rocket engineering is like if you want to create a really complicated bit of software, you can't run the software as an integrated whole, and you can't run it on the computer it's intended to run on. But the first time you put it all together and run it on that computer, it must run with no bugs.
I'm really quite close to, I'm very close to the cutting edge in AI, and it scares the hell out of me. It's capable of vastly more than almost anyone knows, and the rate of improvement is exponential.
You see where things are going with virtual reality? If you extrapolate that out into the future, then eventually those games will be indistinguishable from reality. They'll be so realistic, you will not be able to tell the difference between that game and the reality as we know it. How do we know that that didn't happen in the past, and that we're not in one of those games ourselves?
And you can see this in things like AlphaGo. 6 to 9 months, it went from being unable to beat even a reasonably good Go player to then beating the European world champion, who was ranked 600, then beating Lisa Doll 4-5, who had been world champion for many years, then beating the current world champion, then beating everyone while playing simultaneously. Then there was AlphaZero, which crushed AlphaGo 100-0. And AlphaZero just learned by playing itself, and it can play basically any game that you put the rules in for. Whatever rules you give it, just literally read the rules, play the game, and be superhuman.
There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better. So with automation, almost everything will get very cheap. Take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong.
A suggestion for what the optimization of the AI should be, what's its utility function. You have to be careful about this, because if you say maximize happiness, and the AI concludes that happiness is a function of dopamine and serotonin, so it captures all humans and jacks your brain with large amounts of dopamine and serotonin. Nobody expected that rate of improvement. If you ask those same experts who think AI is not progressing at the rate that I'm saying, I think you will find that their predictions for things like Go and other AI advancements have their batting average is quite weak. It's not good. NHTSA did a study on Tesla's Autopilot version 1, which is relatively primitive, and found that it was a 45% reduction in highway accidents. And that's despite Autopilot 1 being just version 1. Version 2, I think, will be at least 2 or 3 times better. That's the current version that's running right now. The rate of improvement is really dramatic. We have to figure out some way to ensure that the advent of digital superintelligence is one which is symbiotic with humanity. I think that's the single biggest existential crisis that we face, and the most pressing one.
I mean, if we take it that it's inevitable at this point, that some version of AI is coming down the line, how do we steer through that?
I'm not normally an advocate of regulation and oversight. I mean, I think one should generally err on the side of minimizing those things. This is a case where you have a very serious danger to the public. And so therefore, there needs to be a public body that has insight and then oversight to confirm that everyone is developing AI safely. I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads by a lot. And nobody would suggest that we allow anyone to just build nuclear warheads if they want. That would be insane. And mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. Far. So why do we have no regulatory oversight? This is insane.
What's happened over the last year is you've seen what I've been calling artificial stupidity. You're talking about, algorithmic manipulation of social media. Like we're in it now. It's starting to happen.
Like narrow AI is not a species level risk. It will result in dislocation, in lost jobs, and sort of better weaponry and that kind of thing. But it is not a fundamental species level risk, whereas digital superintelligence is. It's really all about laying the groundwork to make sure that if humanity collectively decides that creating digital superintelligence is the right move, then we should do so very, very carefully. Very, very carefully. This is the most important thing that we could possibly do.